They spent a century erasing the story. We spent 40 minutes putting it back. Every archive they bombed, every library they burned, every algorithm they buried it under. A century of Hasbara, engineered by Zionists and those faithful to their ethnocentric ideology. And still, the land remembers. This is a historical documentary. Their own generals wrote the evidence. Their own prime ministers signed the confessions. We did not need to fabricate anything. This film does not promote violence. It promotes the oldest form of resistance there is: memory, art, and the right of a people to refuse to die on their knees. The Lebanese call their south El Janoub, not just a direction, but a wound, a promise, and a graveyard for every army that tried to cross it. Every hill remembers, every valley remembers, every olive tree they burned, and every child who grew up in its shadow. This is their story. I was here before the first border was drawn, before the first army marched. For centuries, they asked nothing but rain and harvest. They named me El Khiam. Below me, the Litani cuts through the valley like a vein through a body. This land was whole once. They will come. They always come. But I am older than their armies, and I do not forget. In 1919, Chaim Weizmann stood before the Paris Peace Conference with a map. The northern border of the Jewish homeland, the Litani River. He called it essential. Ben-Gurion wrote it plainly. To the north, the Litani. The river was never just water. It was territory. Dayan wrote the plan. Find a Lebanese officer, buy him, annex everything south of the Litani. After 1967, he declared Israel had satisfying frontiers, with the exception of Lebanon. What came next was not a surprise. It was a plan written in ink before it was written in blood. In March 1978, 25,000 soldiers crossed the border. They called it Operation Litani. The villagers had no army, only olive trees and children. 285,000 fled north overnight. The south emptied like a body losing blood. They left behind Saad Haddad, a puppet in a Lebanese uniform, with Israeli hands pulling the strings. The United Nations drew a line. Israel erased it. The occupation had begun. In June 1982, the beast returned. 60,000 soldiers, tanks blackening every road south to north. They called it Peace for Galilee. There was no peace, only iron and fire. 78 days they strangled Beirut. Warships shelling from the sea, jets tearing the sky apart. A capital city choking on its own ash. Ariel Sharon stood on a rooftop and watched it burn. A butcher admiring his work. The PLO left by sea. Fighters packed onto ferries, staring back at a city they could no longer defend. The port burned behind them. But the wound they left behind would grow its own teeth. Israeli flares lit the sky above Sabra and Shatila. Night became a stage. For 40 hours, Hobeika's phalangists moved through the camp. The Israeli army sealed the exits. The flares kept burning. When the sun rose, scattered shoes, open doors. A silence that still screams. The world read it in the morning papers. The Kahan Commission called it indirect responsibility. The dead called it something else. From the rubble of 1982, a movement was born. In the Bekaa Valley, young men trained with nothing but faith and memory. In 1985, they declared it to the world. We are the sons of this land. War was brought to our door. Israel killed Abbas Musawi from the sky. They thought they ended the resistance. Instead, they unleashed it. A young cleric stepped into the light. His name was Hassan Nasrallah, and behind him stood the Party of God. While Nasrallah built the resistance, Israel built a prison on the hilltop of Khiam. No trial, no charge, just a door that closed behind you. They called the cells dog kennels, too small to stand, too narrow to lie down. They electrocuted men until they forgot their own names. They hung women from their wrists for days. They let dogs into the cells at night. A young woman named Soha Bekhara spent 10 years inside, 6 of them in solitary. They never broke her. Khiam was built to bury the resistance. Instead, it became its furnace. The furnace burned, and Israel answered the only way it knew how, by punishing the civilians. April 1996. Families fled to the United Nations compound in Kana. They believed the blue flag would protect them. Israel shelled it anyway. 106 dead under the UN flag. A drone circled above and filmed every second. They knew. They fired again. Kana was not a battlefield. It was a slaughterhouse. And the world watched it on the evening news and changed the channel. The world changed the channel, but the resistance never changed its mind. May 25th, 2000. 18 years of darkness, broken in a single dawn. The SLA did not retreat. They evaporated. Uniforms abandoned on the road like shed skin. The people climbed the hill barefoot. The gates of Khiam swung open, and sunlight poured into rooms that had not seen it in years. Men who entered as boys stumbled out with white hair and hands that had forgotten how to stop shaking. In the streets, they dragged the puppet Saad Haddad's statue from its throne and let it kiss the dirt it had ruled over. The dog kennels fell silent, not from fear this time, from freedom. The hill was free, but freedom needs a shadow, and the shadow had a father no one could find. No photograph, no interview, no confirmed sighting in 20 years. The CIA called him the most capable operative they had ever encountered. The Mossad hunted him for decades. The FBI offered millions for his shadow. His name was Imad Mugnir. The resistance called him Haj Radwan. The world called him the Father of Smoke. He moved like smoke through borders, changed cars daily, changed faces, entered through one door and vanished through another. He built Hezbollah's military wing from nothing, into the most disciplined guerrilla force the Middle East had ever seen. Delta Force, Mossad, MI6, every intelligence service on Earth, and none of them could touch the smoke. For 25 years, he was the ghost that kept Israel awake. He trained the fighters, he designed the ambushes, he built the tunnels, and when a Merkava burned in the south, his fingerprints were on the fire. On February 12, 2008, in Damascus, they killed him. A bomb hidden in his car. But you cannot kill smoke. You can only scatter it. Hezbollah named its most elite unit after his ghost. They called it the Radwan Force. At his funeral, Nasrallah stood before the thousands and said, "You killed one Imad, but Imad gave birth to 1,000 Imads." The smoke never cleared. But the father of smoke was not dead yet. 2006 was still his war. And Israel was about to find out what he had spent 20 years building. They bombed the museum at Qiyam first, as if destroying the memory of their own defeat could erase it. Nasrallah appeared on screen and told Israel, "Look at the sea." The INS Hanit burned on the horizon. The navy that ruled the Mediterranean, humiliated by a single missile from the shore. Then came the valley, Wadi al-Hujair. 24 Merkavas entered in a column. They thought they were hunting guerrillas. They were walking into a graveyard. From the town of Adchit, a man named Ali Saleh walked into the trees. The resistance called him Bilal. He waited, and when the first cornet struck, the valley became a furnace. Bilal ran between positions, firing and reloading. One man against an armored column. When the smoke cleared, 11 Merkavas lay burning. The myth of the invincible tank died in that valley, and Bilal walked out of the trees. His grave looks no different from the others, except for the words carved on it: "Destroyer of the Merkava legend." The War of 2006 was named Harb Tammuz, the July War. And there is a story from that war that not many know. During the bombardment, Israel dropped bombs on 11 buildings in Tadhiyah. 11. Not because they had intelligence on all 11, but because Nasrallah might have been inside one of them. They leveled an entire neighborhood to reach one man. He survived. Nasrallah, Mugnir, Suleimani, the cleric, the ghost, the general. 3 men hiding in the same shadow. Nasrallah did not survive because he was lucky. He survived because Imad taught him how to become invisible. They switched cars in underground garages. They trusted no technology, only concrete and silence. The resistance won the July War. For the first time in the history of the Arab world, a guerrilla force defeated the Israeli army on the battlefield. And in the silence after the guns, a woman stood on a stage in Tyre and did what no army could. She sang. Her name was Julia Boutros, a Christian woman from the mountains, singing a letter written by Hassan Nasrallah to the fighters on the battlefield. She turned his words into a song called Ahibai, My Loved Ones. And when her voice carried across the crowd, the resistance was no longer just fighters in the hills. It was a melody, a mother humming it while she swept the rubble from her doorstep, a child singing it on the way to a school that was no longer standing.
The candles went out, the melody faded, and 18 years after the July War, Israel found a new way to kill. September 17th, 2024. Across Lebanon, thousands of pagers beeped at the same moment. On kitchen tables, in shirt pockets, in the hands of fathers sitting with their children. Then they exploded, simultaneously. Thousands of tiny bombs disguised as communication devices. Hands were torn off. Eyes were lost. Children standing next to their fathers were shredded by shrapnel meant for someone else. This was not a military operation. This was a harvest. And the world called it innovative.
September 27th, 2024. Tadhiyya at golden hour. Balconies draped with laundry. The smell of coffee and bread. Whenever Nasrallah spoke, life stopped. When the world was blurry, his voice made it clear again. Not just for the South, for every people living under occupation. Every movement that refused to kneel. Every generation that needed someone to name the thing they already felt. He had a gift that cannot be manufactured. The ability to walk into a room of millions through a screen and make every single person feel he was speaking directly to them. Families gathered around the television. In the streets, giant screens. Old men on plastic chairs. Children playing beneath his words without fully listening and still absorbing everything. His voice was not just a voice. It was the pulse that told the dispossessed of this earth, you are not alone. You are not forgotten. And you will not lose. Then the sky split open. No warning, no siren. 80 American-made bunker busters. 1 square kilometer. The earth shook for miles. Tadhiyya folded like paper. A man frozen on the street staring at his phone. A barber mid-haircut who will never finish. A taxi driver with tears running into his moustache. A news anchor on live television, her voice cracking, unable to finish the sentence. The man who survived 11 buildings in 2006 did not survive the 80 bombs of 2024. 5 months later, 1.4 million people filled the stadium and the streets beyond it. The largest funeral the Middle East had ever seen. Yellow coffins, draped in flowers, moved through the crowd like boats on a human sea, a turban resting on top. The crowd did not cheer. They wept. They shook. They held photographs of a man they would never hear again. Then the jets came. Israeli jets screaming overhead, like hyenas circling a lion's funeral. Every head looked up. No one ran. No one flinched. Fists rose toward the sky, not in fear, in answer. They buried the Secretary General. They killed the commanders. They leveled the neighborhoods. And they called it victory. But underground, the machine never stopped. No electronics, no signals, maps drawn on ammunition crates, veterans training the next generation in the ruins of the last war, cornets loaded in silence, drones assembled in darkness. You cannot kill a resistance. You can only make it angrier. This is not revenge. This is تصفية الحساب, the settling of accounts.